My wife traded our marriage for one night, so I gave her what she deserved. There's something about silk dresses and manicured lawns that makes betrayal taste more expensive. The Vandalin's house was like something out of a glossy magazine. 2 stories of old money charm, with white pillars that screamed Southern grace and a cobblestone driveway that could have been laid by Roman emperors. It was the kind of place where people drank their bourbon neat, smiled with practiced ease, and whispered infidelities behind champagne flutes. I didn't belong here, but Sharon did. She glided up the steps like the marble was made for her heels, her red cocktail dress hugging her body with dangerous precision. Her hair was up, the way I always liked it, but she hadn't asked if I still did. She didn't have to. Not tonight. Try to relax, she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. This will be fun. I nodded, but something in my gut turned over. It wasn't nerves. It was instinct. Inside, the party was in full swing. The lights were dimmed just enough to feel sultry without being seedy. Jazz floated through the house like smoke. People moved in loose circles, sipping drinks and laughing like they'd known each other in a former life. I recognized no one. We were greeted by in Vanderlyn, a tall woman with silver blonde hair and eyes that had clearly seen too much and learned to enjoy it. Her husband Hank trailed behind her, a tall, barrel-chested man with the smile of a wolf. Sharon, and purred, kissing both of her cheeks. So glad you made it. I was introduced as Frank, and the conversation quickly passed me by. They weren't interested in husbands. Not really. For the next 2 hours, I played the good man. I smiled when spoken to, made polite conversation about real estate markets and European travel, sipped from a tumbler of whiskey I barely tasted. Sharon, meanwhile, was radiant. She moved through the room like it belonged to her, laughter spilling from her lips with just a little too much effort. When I caught her whispering with and near the patio, I should have known something was off. But I didn't. Not yet. It wasn't until dessert was cleared and the music shifted, slower, darker, almost tribal, that I noticed a shift. A new tension entered the room. The smile sharpened. The drinks got stronger. Then, and stood in the center of the living room, lifted a delicate glass bell and rang at once. The room fell silent. "Ladies," she said, smiling mysteriously. "You know what to do." Chairs scraped the floor as a dozen women stood, Sharon among them. Without a word, they walked to a large crystal bowl placed on the antique side table. One by one, they dropped something inside. Keys. House keys. I blinked. At first, I thought it was symbolic, some grown-up icebreaker. But then I looked at Hank, who was licking his lips like a man about to feast, and suddenly I knew. No, no way. What the hell is going on? I whispered to Sharon as she returned to her seat. Her expression was unreadable, but her voice was calm. Too calm. "It's just a game," she said. "What kind of game?" "A fun one. A little adventure." She touched my arm, but her fingers felt like strangers. "Don't overthink it." My heart started to race. "What did you put in that bowl?" "Our key." I stood, grabbing her wrist tightly. "You knew this was going to happen?" She didn't deny it. "You should have told me. If I had, we wouldn't be here. You never try anything new, Frank." "This isn't a wine tasting, Sharon. This is cheating, dressed up in candlelight." She yanked her arm away and hissed, "Don't make a scene." But it was too late. I stood up straighter, walked to the bowl, and stared into the glittering pile of temptation. Red plastic cover, our key, right near the top. I reached in, pulled it out, and held it up. "I wasn't told about this," I said loudly. "My wife brought me here under false pretenses, and I'm not sharing her with any of you." The room froze. Mouths gaped. Hank raised an eyebrow. Anne's wine glass trembled slightly before she set it down. "This is a private gathering," someone muttered. "Yeah," I said. "And this part of the party? I'm opting out. Permanently." Sharon looked like she could spit fire. Her face turned scarlet. I waited, hoped she would grab my hand and follow me out. Instead, she did what shattered everything. She turned to the group and said, "I apologize for my husband's behavior. Obviously, he wasn't ready for this kind of evening. Her voice was controlled, polite, polished, but I could see the fury in her eyes. "I'll be leaving now," she added, and followed me through the crowd, heels clicking like a metronome of wrath. The damage was done, and the night was far from over. The kitchen was too bright. Frank stood under the glow of recessed lighting that bounced harshly off granite countertops and glassware. The noise of laughter and flirtation still hummed behind them, muffled by the soft jazz pouring from hidden speakers. But in that moment, it felt like the house had fallen dead silent. Sharon leaned against the island, wine glass still in hand, the rim stained with coral lipstick. Her smirk was light, but her eyes held a strange challenge, almost like she was daring him to raise his voice, daring him to say what they both knew was coming. "You knew," Frank said slowly, his voice tight with restraint. "You knew what this party was really about." Sharon didn't flinch. She sipped her wine like it was just another Saturday night. "Yes, I did." Frank blinked. The words weren't surprising, but her casualness was. "And you didn't think that was something I should know?" His voice cracked slightly at the edge, but he held it firm. "If I had told you, we wouldn't have come," she said simply, eyes scanning the rim of her glass. "And if we hadn't come, I wouldn't get to have what I wanted." Frank's hand curled into a fist at his side. "You wanted this? Some stranger pulling your key out of a bowl and taking you upstairs like some door prize?" "It's just one night, Frank." Her voice was cool, too controlled. "It's harmless. Everyone here knows the rules. No strings, no guilt. We go home tomorrow and move on." He took a step toward her, heart pounding against his ribs like war drums. "We don't come back from this, Sharon. We don't move on." Her brows knit in mild irritation, as though she were explaining something to a slow child. "We've been married 10 years. We've done the date nights, the vacations, the safe little routines. I've been a good wife, a good mother. I love you, but I need this." "Need this?" he echoed, disbelief cutting into his tone. "You need to sleep with another man to feel alive." She didn't answer right away. Instead, she placed her glass gently on the counter and folded her arms, not in defense, but in defiance. "I want to feel like more than just your wife and the kids' mom. I want to feel wanted, desired, like a woman again, not just a title." Frank's jaw clenched. "So I'm the villain now? Because I didn't make you feel wanted?" "No," she said, softer this time. "But I want something different. Just once. Something new. Something dangerous." "Then you want a fantasy," he shot back. "And you came here to kill reality." Sharon took a deep breath and looked away, toward the hall where muffled voices and footsteps crept closer. It was almost time. The bowl was waiting, her key already inside. "I already put the key in," she said. "What?" "I dropped our key in the bowl," she repeated. "It's too late now." Frank's chest tightened like a vice. He felt like someone had knocked the air out of his lungs, but he kept his face calm. "It's never too late. Come with me now. We'll leave. Forget this place." She hesitated, just a flicker, but the tension in her posture returned almost instantly. "It would be rude to leave now. Everyone's watching. I've committed, Frank. I can't back out." "Yes," he said, voice rising just slightly. "You can. You just don't want to." Another moment passed, thick with unspoken truths and rotting intimacy. Finally, Frank stepped back, his gaze narrowing. "Fine," he said. "Then let's make this simple." He turned on his heel and marched back into the living room. Sharon followed, her heels clicking sharply on the hardwood, echoing like gunshots. The guests had gathered around the ornate bowl, laughter still floating through the air like smoke. Couples stood side by side, champagne flutes in hand, excited anticipation on their faces. Frank stepped forward, shoulders squared, and plunged his hand into the bowl. Keys clinked together like bones in a grave. He searched with purpose and pulled out the one he knew. Red plastic grip, small nick on the bottom edge. Their house key. Sharon's eyes widened slightly. The chatter faded as guests began to notice the tension, the drama unraveling like a film playing in real time. Frank raised the key into the air. I wasn't told about this little arrangement beforehand, he announced, his voice clear and cutting. And I'm not here to play these games. I don't share my wife. And I sure as hell don't let her throw our marriage into a bowl like it's a party favor. A stunned silence fell over the room. Some stared in awkward confusion. Others whispered. One man muttered, "Buzzkill," under his breath. Frank turned to Sharon. Her face had gone pale, then flushed with hot, furious color. "You have a choice," he said to her, tone steely. "Come home with me now, and we leave this madness behind. Or stay. Stay, and don't ever come home again." The room held its breath. Sharon stared at him, trembling, her pride unraveling in real time. For a moment, Frank thought he saw regret, a flicker of something real. But then she spoke, voice sharp with bitterness. "I'm sorry for my husband's outburst," she told the room. "It's clear he's not open to adventure." She glanced at Frank. "I'll leave with him. For now." She turned, heels slicing the silence, and marched toward the door. As Frank followed, he knew she hadn't chosen him. She had chosen to save face. And the night wasn't over yet. It was just the beginning of the end. The car was dark and silent, a vacuum between us where warmth used to live. I gripped the wheel with white-knuckled tension, the leather straining beneath my grip. Sharon sat next to me in the passenger seat, fuming. The glow of streetlights passed over her like interrogation lamps, casting sharp angles across her face, revealing something new in her expression. Not guilt, but frustration. "You embarrassed me," she finally said, her voice clipped like she was clenching it between her teeth. I kept my eyes on the road. "You mean I ruined your perfect night of infidelity?" "Yeah, I suppose I did." She scoffed, crossing her arms. "It wasn't about cheating. It was about fun. About excitement. For God's sake, Frank, it was just one night." "That's the thing, Sharon. One night can change everything." Her lip twitched. She looked out the window like she wanted to leap out into traffic just to escape the conversation. "You don't get it. I'm a mother, a wife, a homemaker. Day after day, I'm everything to everyone, but nothing to myself. That party was my chance. Just once. To feel like me again." "You don't get to rediscover yourself between another man's sheets," I said. "You find yourself in a book club or a mountain hike, not with Glenn or whoever else had the misfortune of pulling your damn key." That last word, key, hung in the air like the chime of a slow, tolling bell. She'd put our marriage, our home, into a bowl like a party favor. And for what? A few moans in the dark with someone she barely knew? Her voice rose, tinged with desperation now. "Why are you being like this? I knew you'd overreact. That's why I didn't tell you ahead of time." "That's not a defense. That's manipulation." She didn't reply. I pulled the car abruptly to the side of the road, tires kicking gravel. My heart was thudding so hard I could feel it in my throat. "I want you to listen to me very carefully," I said, turning to face her for the first time since we left the Vandalins. "If you really want this night, this so-called freedom, if sleeping with someone else matters that much to you, then fine. Have it, but not with my blessing. Not with the illusion that we'll be okay in the morning." Sharon looked at me, eyes wide, uncertain for the first time. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying this is your fork in the road," I said. "You can come home with me. Right now. We'll figure it out. We'll talk. Maybe we'll fight. But at least we'll still be us. Or you can go back. Walk into that house, into that bed, into that man's arms. But if you do, don't bother coming back. Not ever." Her lips parted. She searched my face like she was trying to find the old Frank in there, the one who might have caved, cracked a joke, and let her off the hook. He wasn't there. She hesitated, hand hovering over the car door handle. "You don't mean that," she whispered. "I mean every word." Her hand trembled, fingers brushing the chrome handle. "Can't we talk about this tomorrow?" "No, this is the talk." She looked down at her lap, then at the house behind us, still glowing with music and laughter, silhouettes moving through curtained windows. A den of sin, disguised as sophistication. She glanced back at me, and for a split second, I saw regret. But it passed. She popped the door. The dome light came on, casting her in pale illumination. "Will you pick me up in the morning?" she asked softly. "Please." I laughed. It wasn't kind. It wasn't cruel. It was the sound of a man watching everything he built burn down in front of him and realizing he'd forgotten to grab a fire extinguisher. "Glenn can take you home," I said. "He earned it, didn't he?" "Frank, enjoy your night, Sharon." I didn't wait for her to say another word. The moment the door clicked shut, I slammed the gas pedal, tires squealing, smoke curling behind me as I tore off into the night like a man outrunning a ghost. Through the rearview mirror, I caught one last glimpse of her, standing on the curb, dress fluttering in the wind, mouth slightly open, like maybe she was about to call out. But she didn't, and neither did I. I just kept driving deeper into the darkness alone. Not just in the car, but in the world. The streetlight flickered above us, casting an eerie orange halo over the roof of the car. It was the kind of suburban street that usually whispered of quiet safety and domestic bliss. But not tonight. Tonight, it was the scene of a marriage unraveling. The silence in the car had become unbearable. I could feel the weight of her hesitation beside me, Sharon's hand resting on the door handle, unmoving, trembling slightly. She wasn't looking at me. Her gaze was fixed somewhere between guilt and desire, caught in the emotional purgatory she had created. I didn't look at her either. My fingers clenched the steering wheel, knuckles pale under the strain. My foot hovered over the gas pedal, eager to leave behind everything I had once thought permanent. My voice, when it came, was calm. Too calm. "You wanted one night," I said, eyes still on the dashboard. "Here it is." She swallowed audibly, finally turning to face me. Her makeup, carefully applied earlier that evening, was beginning to smudge at the corners of her eyes. "Frank, I didn't mean for it to get this far." "Didn't you?" I asked, still without looking. Her voice cracked. "I just wanted something different, something that felt alive." My jaw clenched, a thousand things I wanted to say clawing at my throat. But I didn't say any of them. I reached over, unlocked the door, and leaned slightly toward her. "You've got a choice. Right now, go back in there, or come home with me and we pretend this was some sick misunderstanding." She didn't move. "You can't be serious," she said softly, like she couldn't quite believe the decision had come down to this. "You'd actually throw away our entire marriage over one night?" I turned to face her at last, and I saw it, the glint of something selfish behind her watery eyes. She didn't think I'd do it. She thought I was bluffing, that I'd get angry, sure, sulk maybe, but she thought I'd eventually crawl back to her like I always had when we fought. Like a good, faithful husband. "You threw it away the moment you put our house key in that bowl." That stunned her. Her lips parted slightly, but no words came. And then she tried one last tactic, the soft voice, the fake sweetness, the illusion of closeness. "Frank, could you maybe just come pick me up in the morning?" I stared at her, stunned. "You're asking me to drop you off at another man's bed like some kind of chauffeur, then come collect you when he's had his fun?" She flinched. "Don't say it like that. You're making it ugly." "It is ugly, Sharon." She looked away, ashamed but not enough. "I'm not in love with anyone else. I still love you. I need something new. Just once." My voice dropped to a whisper, as if saying it softer would make the pain sting less. "You want to be a woman for a night, not a wife. That's what you said." She nodded once. "Then go," I said, sitting back in my seat. "Be that woman, but don't expect to find your husband waiting when the sun comes up." She sat still for a moment, trembling. Then she opened the door. The car interior was suddenly flooded with the cool night air, and for a second, I hoped, prayed, she would change her mind. That she'd slam the door shut and scream at me to take her home. That this whole nightmare would end in reconciliation. But she didn't. Her heels clicked softly against the pavement as she stepped out. She lingered by the door for a beat, looking down the block toward the Vanderlands porch, where laughter still floated out into the night. See you in the morning, Frank, she said, not even turning around. I didn't respond. She started to close the door. Sharon. She paused. I won't be there. She shut the door anyway. I floored the gas pedal. The tires squealed beneath me, screaming down the street as I tore away from the woman I'd spent a decade loving, and who now wanted a stranger more than me. In the rearview mirror, I saw her silhouette standing under the streetlight. Alone. Still. Small. But I didn't slow down. Not for her. Not anymore. The car was silent now. The air inside hung thick with everything unsaid, words too jagged to speak, emotions too volatile to name. The only sound came from the tires as they chewed the asphalt, spinning beneath Frank's knuckles as they gripped the steering wheel tighter than ever before. His heartbeat roared louder than the engine. In the passenger seat, Sharon was gone. Not physically yet, but the woman sitting beside him wasn't his wife anymore. She wasn't the same person he had built a home with, raised children with, whispered secrets to under warm blankets and dim bedside lamps. That version of her had ended the moment she reached in her purse, pulled out their house key, and dropped it in that godforsaken bowl. She had made her choice, and now Frank was making his. When they reached the house, the porch light illuminated the front lawn like a spotlight on a stage. The scene was all wrong. Too calm. Too familiar for something that had just completely crumbled. Frank parked in the driveway without a word and got out. He didn't slam the car door, though he wanted to. He didn't stomp inside or throw his keys or shatter anything. Not yet. Rage, he learned, was better used cold. Controlled. Directed. Sharon followed quietly, trailing behind like a shadow, unsure of where it belonged. Frank unlocked the door, stepped inside, and paused at the threshold. Everything in their living room looked exactly the same as when they'd left for the party. The kids' shoes by the staircase, a stray crayon on the coffee table, the baby monitor still glowing softly in the corner. Ordinary, deceptively normal. The sight made his stomach turn. He turned to Sharon. You'll be sleeping in the guest room tonight, he said flatly, not looking at her. She didn't respond. She didn't even argue. He climbed the stairs alone. Each step was slower than the last, heavy with the finality of what he was about to do. When he reached the bedroom, he paused for a moment at the foot of their bed, then crossed to the dresser. He opened the top drawer, the one where he kept the things he rarely touched but never let go of. His wedding ring sat there now, warm from the day's wear. He pulled it off slowly. It had once felt like a second skin, a symbol of forever. Now it felt like a chain, cold and wrong and foreign. He stared at it for a moment, silver, simple, engraved inside with 3 words. Yours. Always. Frank. With a sharp exhale, he closed his fist around the ring, opened the drawer, and took out a hammer from the small toolkit he kept there. He didn't hesitate. The first strike echoed in the quiet room like a gunshot. The second dented it. The third flattened it. By the 5th, it was ruined, just a warped piece of metal. A fitting tribute, he thought, to the marriage it once represented. Next came the drawer where he kept their documents. Tax returns, passports, insurance forms, and nestled between manila folders, their marriage certificate. He stared at the parchment, elegant, official, sealed with the county's stamp. It was meant to be permanent, like love, like vows. He tore it in half, then in half again, and once more. He left the 4 torn pieces folded neatly atop Sharon's pillow. Next to them, the flattened ring. When he was done, he didn't feel powerful. He didn't feel vindicated. He felt hollow, like a man who just buried someone. Because he had. He grabbed a duffel bag from the closet, filled it with enough clothes for a few weeks, tossed in his laptop, toiletries, and charger. He paused at the doorway of the bedroom one last time, scanning the space that had once been sacred. No more. Downstairs, Sharon stood in the foyer, arms crossed, face unreadable. Frank didn't stop, didn't say a word. He opened the front door and stepped into the night. The air was cooler than before, sharper. It bit his skin like punishment. He placed the bag in the trunk of his car, climbed into the driver's seat, and started the engine. But before he backed out, he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out his phone. He turned it on. It buzzed to life with missed calls and text messages. He ignored them all. He had only one thing left to do before disappearing for good. He drove past the Van Allen's house, slowly. Lights were still on. Laughter trickled faintly into the street like smoke through a cracked window. A few couples stood outside, some saying goodbye, others exchanging flirtatious glances. Frank scanned the crowd. No Sharon. She was inside now, and she'd never be his again. The motel was quiet, the kind of silence that didn't soothe but gnawed at the edges of your mind. A dim lamp buzzed in the corner of the room, casting a dull orange glow over the battered furniture. My suitcase sat untouched on the floor. A six-pack of Newcastle rested beside me on the nightstand. 3 bottles in, and my hands still trembled. I stared at the ceiling, waiting for my phone to ring. And then it did. Sharon. My stomach clenched. For a fleeting second, my heart surged with hope. Maybe she'd come to her senses. Maybe she was calling to say she walked away from Glenn, that she was standing outside the party house, needing me to come get her. But I didn't answer. I couldn't. I wasn't ready to hear the truth, or worse, the lies. The phone buzzed again, and again, 5 times in total. Then a voicemail. I took a deep breath and pressed play. Frank, you're acting like a big kid about this. Her voice was syrupy sweet, infuriatingly casual, like she was scolding me for leaving dirty dishes in the sink. It wasn't the voice of a woman who had just detonated 10 years of marriage. It was the voice of someone who thought she'd get away with it. Rick Wilson told me what you said. You didn't have to be so rude. How many times do I have to tell you? It's just one night. One new guy a few times. That doesn't make me a fallen woman. I sat up, the bottle slipping from my fingers and thudding against the carpet. My jaw tightened with every word. Even if it hurts a little now, I'll make it up to you, in ways you can't imagine. When I come home tomorrow, it'll be like none of this ever happened. She said it like she was planning to make me pancakes and kiss my forehead. You probably don't care, but since you took our house key from the bowl, they gave me a new one. Glenn got it. He seems sweet, very respectful. He's married too. Same number of kids. Glenn, a faceless stranger. The man now standing between me and everything I thought was sacred. We're at his house. His wife and her boyfriend are in another room, far enough away that we won't hear them when things get heated. She giggled, like a teenager on her first date. My wife, laughing about sleeping with another man like it was a game. You know how loud I can get when you touch me. That line alone burned like acid. She didn't stop. Don't worry. I won't let him do anything to me that you haven't done. I told him maybe just missionary, since it's my first time with someone else. He was okay with it. I was gripping the phone so hard my knuckles were white. He says he'll take me home when we're done, and I'll shower before I get back to make sure I'm fresh for you. I couldn't breathe. My pulse thundered in my ears. The words were blurring together now, but the damage was done. She thought I'd take her back, that I'd pretend this never happened, that I'd lie next to her, knowing Glenn had been there the night before, and still want her. Sweet dreams, my love. See you in the morning. The message ended. I stared at the phone in disbelief, and then, without thinking, I called her back. She picked up on the 3rd ring. Hey, honey, she said breathlessly. Glenn and I just got into bed. We're getting comfortable with each other, so I can't talk for long. Her voice was light, almost excited. And that's when I snapped. Shut the hell up, Sharon. There was silence on the other end. I imagined Glenn beside her listening. This is the last time you'll ever hear from me. You have no idea what you've done, but you will. You better enjoy Glenn's company tonight, because the price you're about to pay will be more than you can handle. My voice was ice. You sleep with him, we're done. You've broken our vows, our home, our family. I loved you. God, I loved you more than I've ever loved anything. But now, I hate you, and I mean that. I hung up. Immediately, the phone rang again. I let it go to voicemail. Frank, why are you acting like this? You can't just leave me. We have kids, a life together. Glenn's here now. He's kissing my neck and I can't just say no. I promised him, but we're not getting divorced. This isn't the end, okay? I'll be yours again in the morning. Just let me finish tonight. Please try to understand. Then came the line that tore through me like a blade. He's already here. Oh God, please, Glenn. I ended the message before it finished. I didn't need to hear any more. I knew what was happening. I stared into the motel ceiling, cold, silent, lost. My heart, my once proud, loyal heart, felt like it had been ripped from my chest, tossed into the dirt, and stomped into something unrecognizable. There were no tears left, just rage and numbness. That was the moment I knew there was no turning back. She didn't just cheat. She discarded me. And I would never forget that. The motel room was dimly lit. One overhead bulb with a weak yellow glow and a television flickering in the corner, playing reruns I wasn't watching. The air was thick with stillness, broken only by the quiet clink of my beer bottle against the nightstand. I finished my third Newcastle and cracked open a fourth, hoping it would numb what the others couldn't. But nothing dulled the thought of Sharon. She was somewhere else tonight, in someone else's bed. That truth wasn't hypothetical anymore. It was real. It was happening. And every second dragged like the slow scrape of rusted metal across glass. I leaned back against the scratchy motel pillow, phone in hand, resisting the urge to check my messages again. Well, of course I did. Just one more time. As if I'd magically discover a message saying she changed her mind, that she was waiting outside, that she was sorry. No such luck. Instead, I had another new voicemail. I stared at the screen for a few moments before hitting play. Hey, honey, Sharon's voice came through in a whisper. Glenn and I just got into bed and we're getting comfortable with each other, so I can't talk for long. I froze. Every muscle in my body locked. Shut the F asterisk 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 up, Sharon. I muttered to the empty room as the voicemail played on. He's really nice, Frank. He says he won't force me to do anything I don't like. Don't worry. I told him this was my first time with another man. We might just keep it vanilla. Normal stuff. I'm not looking to go wild or anything. She giggled. She giggled. And just like that, I snapped. My fingers clenched around the phone like it was her neck. I felt the blood rush to my ears. I couldn't breathe right. Then she said the words that ripped the soul from my body. He's going to take me home tomorrow. I'll shower and rinse off first. You won't even notice anything, baby. No sloppy seconds. Just clean and fresh for you. We'll be okay. She said it like she was promising to grab milk on the way home. Casual. Thoughtless. Like I could be scrubbed back into loving her again. My chest burned. My hand was trembling. No, not tonight. Not ever again. I hit call. She answered on the third ring. Hey, babe. Glenn and I are just getting cozy. Can't talk long. Don't say another word. Silence. You've lost me, Sharon. You have no idea what you've done, but you will. Frank, don't be like this. It's just, I'm not your husband anymore. I don't even know who the hell you are. You better really enjoy tonight, because when the sun comes up, you won't have a home to come back to. You'll be nothing but a memory, one I'll spend the rest of my life trying to forget. She was quiet, for once. And Sharon, I added, voice low and steady. I never thought I'd say this to the woman I married, but I hate you. I hate you more right now than I ever loved you. I hung up. Then I waited. I knew she'd call again, and she did almost instantly. I let it go to voicemail. Her voice was shaky now, full of panic and confusion. Frank, why are you acting like this? We're married. We have kids. I needed this. Glenn's a good guy. I promised him a night, and Frank, you're ruining everything. I can't even enjoy this now. We're not getting divorced. I'm coming home in the morning. We'll talk then. We'll fix it. I love you. You love me. This is just an experience. That's all. Another voicemail came 5 minutes later. I could hear her whispering to someone, probably Glenn, then a soft laugh. Then, be with me, Glenn. This is my night. That was it. That sentence would haunt me forever. I gritted my teeth, swallowing a scream. The beer in my hand suddenly tasted like acid. I threw it against the wall. Glass shattered, spilling foam down the stained motel wallpaper. I stared at the mess but didn't move. It wasn't the beer that broke me. It was her. She made her choice. Over a decade of marriage, 3 beautiful children, thousands of shared memories, and she tossed it all away for a man she just met. Not for love, not even for lust, but for novelty. I picked up my phone again, this time with a strange calmness. I left one final voicemail. You've made your bed, literally. Enjoy him. Look into his eyes while he's inside you, and remember that you traded everything we built for those new sensations. But just know, the man who loved you, he's gone. You've buried him tonight. You say you'll come home and act like nothing happened. But I won't be there. You won't get a second chance. I'm not a doormat. I'm not a fallback plan. And I sure as hell am not your safety net. Glenn may have gotten your key tonight, but he also helped me lock the door behind you. I hung up, turned off my phone, and slumped back against the headboard. The room was quiet again. Just me, the broken glass, and the cold realization that my marriage, my life, was no longer what it had been hours ago. She might have seen this as a game, but I just played my final move. And this time, I was done playing nice. The sun was rising over the motel parking lot, casting soft gold on the cracked pavement and mist-covered windshields. Inside room 112, Frank sat on the edge of the bed, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor with bloodshot eyes. His wedding ring, the once sacred symbol of unity, was flattened, bruised like his heart, sitting next to an empty bottle of Newcastle on the nightstand. He hadn't slept. Not really. Sleep didn't come easy when the woman you trusted more than anyone in the world had whispered to another man, "This is my night." Sharon's voice still echoed in his head. Cheerful, playful, giddy with anticipation. As if she were a teenager sneaking out for a thrill. Except she wasn't. She was a mother of 3, his wife, and she chose to play mistress to a stranger for one night of adventure. Frank had always believed betrayal would come with guilt, maybe regret. Instead, Sharon had left messages like she was narrating a weekend getaway. "He's married too," she had said brightly. "It's like we're helping each other." Frank's stomach turned. He checked his phone. 5 missed calls, all from Sharon. For voicemails he refused to listen to. He didn't need to. He knew what they'd say. Half begging, half rationalizing. Apologies wrapped in excuses. But this chapter wasn't about her anymore. This one was about him. Frank opened the motel drawer and pulled out a notebook from the nightstand. Inside, hotel staff had left a branded pen and a blank page with things to remember embossed at the top. Irony. He began to write. "I'm not a husband anymore. I am a father. I am a man. I'm not a doormat." The words flowed like blood from an open wound, raw and honest. Every letter a declaration of independence from the woman who had made a mockery of their vows. I will not be manipulated into accepting betrayal. I will not raise my children to believe that love comes with humiliation. I will not forgive what was done just because it's easier than being alone. He signed it simply, Frank. For the first time in 24 hours, he felt something stir. Not peace. Not yet. But purpose. A direction. He pulled out his phone again. This time, not to read Sharon's messages, but to call someone who actually mattered. His mother. She picked up on the second ring, her voice still laced with sleep. "Frank? Honey, is everything okay?" "No, Ma," he said, trying to steady his voice. "But it will be." He explained everything. Well, not everything, not yet. Just enough to draw the outline of what had happened. Sharon, the party, her decision, his. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "I'm so sorry," she finally said, her voice trembling. "I don't know what's happened to her, but you did the right thing, son, and the kids are safe here, for as long as you need." He nodded, a lump forming in his throat. "I'll come get them soon, once I know what I'm doing," he said. "You're a good father. You always were," she said. "Don't let her rewrite the story." That last line clung to him like armor. Don't let her rewrite the story. An hour later, Frank pulled up to a quiet plaza in a neighboring town. He found a diner with metal chairs and vintage red booths, the kind that smelled like bacon grease and old coffee. He ordered black coffee and eggs over easy, but barely touched them. He wasn't hungry. He was hunting. He scrolled through his phone contacts until he found a name he hadn't dialed in years. Elliot Fain, attorney at law. He remembered the man from a former acquisition deal. Tough as nails, quiet as a church mouse, and absolutely brutal in a courtroom. Divorce wasn't Frank's world, but litigation was. And Elliot was exactly the kind of man who turned betrayal into legal firepower. Frank tapped the number. 2 rings. Fain. Elliot, it's Frank Miller. I need your help. A pause. Sharon. She cheated. I've got proof. Voicemails. Witnesses. Timeline. Are we looking at scorched earth or civil disengagement? Frank stared out the window, watched a couple walk by holding hands. The woman laughed. Innocent. Trusting. Scorched, he said coldly. Salt the ground. Good, Elliot replied. I'll see you at noon. Frank hung up and exhaled. This was it. The moment the marriage officially began to rot on paper the way it already had in spirit. His phone buzzed again. Sharon. Another voicemail. He didn't listen. He didn't care. Because in that moment, Frank was no longer a husband begging for his wife's loyalty. He was a man reclaiming his dignity. And when the dust finally settled, Sharon would learn what one night truly cost. The motel room was dim, washed in the yellow glow of a single lamp that buzzed faintly like a persistent reminder that I wasn't home. Though what even was home anymore? My ring finger felt naked, my chest hollow, and my thoughts were running laps around memories I'd spent a decade building. I sat on the edge of the stiff bed, holding my flattened wedding band in my palm like a dead relic. It still bore the faint inscription, yours forever. I let out a low laugh, dry, cracked, and bitter. Forever had lasted 10 years, 3 kids, and a handful of voicemails I wish I could unhear. Sharon's voice played on repeat in my head, haunting every corner of my mind. Just one night, Frank, just a new experience. I'll make it up to you. But it wasn't just one night. It wasn't just a key in a bowl. It was betrayal, wrapped in the soft velvet of excuses. Her logic was flawless in its delusion. In her mind, she could step outside our vows, dip a toe in the waters of someone else's bed, and come back to me expecting clean sheets and open arms. But that wasn't how loyalty worked. That wasn't how love worked. And that sure as hell wasn't how I worked. I stood and walked to the mirror above the dresser. I didn't recognize the man staring back. His eyes were bloodshot, jaw clenched tight, skin pale under the overhead light. Was this the face of someone who'd been cheated on, or someone who'd failed to see it coming? I thought back to something my father had told me when I was 19, sitting on the porch, watching the rain fall hard on the tin roof of his workshop. If a woman is seriously thinking about sleeping with another man, she's already done it in her mind. Once it's in her head, son, it's only a matter of time before it's in her bed. At the time, I brushed it off as the bitterness of an old man with a wounded past. But now, his words rang through me like thunder. Sharon had already left me long before that party. The key party wasn't her first rebellion. It was her first confession. She had already mentally walked out the door, locked it behind her, and now she wanted to re-enter as if nothing had happened, as if trust could be suspended for a night and then reactivated like a light switch. I thought of the little moments, how she'd been dressing differently lately, a little more perfume, a little less interest in our conversations. She'd been distracted, cold at times, smiling at her phone too often. I had told myself it was stress, work, hormones, anything but what it really was. A slow unraveling of a woman I had given everything to. I remembered the way she used to look at me when we danced in the kitchen, the soft touch on my cheek in the mornings, the long hugs that didn't need words. That woman was gone, and in her place was someone who could plan an entire night of infidelity and call it an adventure. I gritted my teeth, and stared back at my reflection. Call it what it is, I muttered. Adultery, infidelity, betrayal, cheating. There, I said it. She cheated. Not just physically, but emotionally. She had abandoned our vows, tossed aside the foundation we'd built, and asked me to understand, to accept it, to be okay. My blood simmered. My love had been sacred. I didn't just marry her, I chose her every day, through bills and sickness, and screaming toddlers and birthdays and anniversaries. I showed up. I stayed faithful. I stayed. And she stepped out. For Glenn. For new sensations. She giggled about being loud when Glenn touched her. She said she'd rinse off before coming home, as if hot water could wash off what she'd done. I opened the drawer beside the bed and found a notepad and pen. I wrote 2 words at the top of the page. She's gone. And then below it, I began listing every reason why I could never go back. Every cruel phrase, every defiant smirk, every voicemail, every time she downplayed my hurt and elevated her needs over our vows. By the time I was done, the page was full. I folded the paper once, twice, and tucked it into my wallet behind a photo of the kids. It would be my armor, something to pull out when the inevitable doubt crept in. When the kids cried and asked why mommy wasn't home. When Sharon sent flowers or begged to talk. When guilt whispered that maybe I could have forgiven her. No, that list would remind me. She was gone long before she stepped out of the car. She made her choice. And now so had I. I wasn't broken. I wasn't weak. I was done. Not just with her, but with pretending that love could excuse anything. Frank hadn't slept. Not really. He'd closed his eyes a few times in the motel room, letting the exhaustion from the night's chaos pull him into brief, dreamless spells. But every time he stirred, the reality came rushing back like a freight train, loud, brutal, and impossible to stop. His wife, Sharon, the woman he had kissed goodnight every day for over a decade, was lying in another man's bed. By her choice, at her invitation, with the key to their home now meaningless, replaced by Glenn's. The emotional wound throbbed deeper than rage could reach. He wasn't just betrayed, he was broken. But the worst part wasn't even about her. It was about the 3 little faces that would wake up tomorrow expecting everything to be the same. Jocelyn 9, bright, curious, a budding artist who liked to leave glitter trails on the kitchen floor and draw unicorns on the windows with dry erase markers. Rebecca, Ann 8, quiet, thoughtful, always asking questions too big for her age, always hugging with purpose. And Frank Jr. 4, the fireball, his mini-me in every way, mischievous, loud, a heart like an open sky. They were his world, and they had no idea that their mother had just torn that world in half. At 7:30 a.m., Frank stepped outside into the cool Mississippi morning, the motel parking lot silent, save for a few crows overhead. He pulled out his phone and called the one person he trusted most, his mother. She picked up on the second ring. Frank. Her voice held the soft rasp of sleep, but it sharpened instantly at the sound of her son's silence. I need to tell you something, he said quietly. It's bad. Are the kids okay? They're fine. Still with you, right? Yes, of course. What's going on? He took a deep breath, then poured it out in a voice stripped of anger, almost mechanical. What Sharon had done, the party, the key, the messages, Glenn, every sort of detail. His mother didn't interrupt once. When he finished, she exhaled slowly. Oh, Frank, my poor boy. I'm not the one I'm worried about, he said. It's the kids. What's this going to do to them? She didn't answer right away. Finally, she said, they'll be confused, hurt, but they'll survive as long as they have you. You've always been their anchor, Frank. Sharon's still their mother. Yes, and she loves them. But that doesn't excuse her selfishness. Actions have consequences, and you're not wrong for wanting to shield them for what she's become. Frank's hand tightened around the phone. I don't want them to hate her, he said, but I can't let them think this is okay. You don't have to, she said gently. Just be honest. age-appropriate honesty. Tell them you and Sharon are having serious problems and that you're working on keeping them safe and loved. That's all they need right now. Frank swallowed the lump in his throat. He was grateful she was keeping them for the weekend. It gave him time to act, to move. After they hung up, he sat in his car outside the diner, watching the early risers trickle in for breakfast. He didn't have the appetite to eat. His stomach was knotted, churning with fear and fury. Not for Sharon, for the system. She was her mother. In the eyes of the court, that often meant she'd have the upper hand, even if she'd just finished spending the night with a stranger. He thought of Sharon tucking the girls into bed, brushing Jocelyn's hair, while Frank Jr. clung to her hip. And yet, in the same breath, she was the woman who'd giggled into his voicemail about getting loud, while Glenn made love to her. How could someone wear both masks? He couldn't reconcile it, and he wouldn't. His next move was clear. He grabbed his laptop from the back seat and began compiling everything. Every message, every voicemail, every timestamp, the torn certificate, photos of the ring flattened with a hammer. Evidence. He was going to protect his children, not just from public shame, but from the emotional fallout of a mother who decided one night of selfishness was worth more than a lifetime of family. Frank knew what was coming wouldn't be easy. Sharon had always been charming, especially to others. She'd probably cry in court, twist the narrative, say he was controlling, cold, unloving. But he had truth on his side, and 3 children who needed him whole. He wasn't going to let them down. As he packed up to leave the diner parking lot, his phone buzzed again. Voicemail. It was Sharon. Frank, please call me. I'm sorry. I don't know what came over me. I miss the kids. I miss you. I made a mistake. Just please don't do anything drastic. Don't leave me. We're still a family, aren't we? Frank hit delete. No, Sharon. Not anymore. You were a family. Now, you're just the woman who threw her marriage into a bowl at a stranger's party and hoped your husband would pick the wrong key. The glass door swung open with a soft whoosh as Frank stepped into the law office of Ellis and Granger, attorneys at law. The air was crisp and sterile, smelling faintly of printer toner, mahogany, and something metallic, like the scent of quiet, organized vengeance. A receptionist with tight blonde curls and tighter composure looked up from her monitor, offering a polite, practiced smile. Mr. Miller? She asked, already knowing the answer. Yes. Mr. Ellis is expecting you. Please follow me. Frank followed her down a hallway of frosted glass doors, past framed degrees and black and white photographs of judges and courthouse steps. He felt strangely like he was walking toward his own sentencing, and in some ways he was, not to be punished, but to finally set the terms of justice that had been long denied. The receptionist stopped at the last office. Inside, a man in his early 60s stood from behind a sleek walnut desk, clean-shaven, gray at the temples, and with the posture of a man who rarely lost a case. He offered his hand. Mr. Miller, I'm David Ellis. I understand you've had quite a week. Frank shook his hand with a nod. You could say that. Come in. Close the door. Let's talk. They sat across from each other at a table more suitable for chess than for war, though Frank knew they were here to strategize both. Ellis leaned back, folding his fingers. Tell me everything. No filters. So Frank did. He laid it all out. The party, the bowl of keys, Sharon's smirk, her casual confession, the ride home, the fight, the ultimatum, and her choice. He recounted the voicemails, the one where she giggled about how Glenn had gotten her key, the one where she whispered to her lover with her wedding ring still warm on her finger. Ellis listened without interruption, scribbling notes in a slim leather pad, eyes occasionally narrowing behind his reading glasses. When Frank was done, he exhaled slowly, hands clenched on the table like a man who'd just opened a vein. Ellis set his pen down. Well, he said with a lawyer's composure, you married a woman with a romantic appetite for chaos. Frank gave a bitter laugh. You could say that. You've got 3 kids? Jocelyn, 9. Rebecca, Ann, 8. And Frank Jr. just turned 4. Ellis nodded. That complicates things, but it also gives us leverage if handled right. You're in Mississippi, and that works in our favor. It's one of the few states where adultery still means something. So what does that mean for me? It means you have a legal sword, Mr. Miller, and we're going to wield it carefully. You'll file for divorce under grounds of adultery, based on what you've told me. And if you still have those voicemails, it's more than enough. I do, Frank said, pulling out his phone. I haven't deleted a thing. Good, Ellis said, his eyes flashing with that razor-sharp glint of a man who loved a winnable fight. She won't be able to deny a thing. The audio is damning. You made it very clear that her decision would have consequences. She still made it. I wanted her to turn back, Frank admitted, right up until she didn't. Of course you did. That makes you human. But now you become tactical. Frank looked down, rubbing the back of his neck. She's a good mom, you know. Until this, she was always good with the kids. I don't want to destroy her, but I can't let her destroy me either. Ellis's expression softened, but just barely. You're not here to ruin her, Mr. Miller. You're here to protect yourself and your children. The court will likely lean toward joint custody, unless you can prove instability. That party, the premeditation, and those messages, they paint a picture. A woman who placed a reckless impulse above her family. Frank's jaw tightened. What about child support? The house? I'll get you set up with a forensic accountant. If you've been the primary earner and she's committed adultery, we'll push for favorable terms. We'll file immediately and request temporary custody with visitation, pending the hearing. Her behavior gives us ground to do that. Frank nodded slowly, absorbing it all. You're not alone in this, Ellis continued. You came to me. That was your first smart move. Now let's make more. He slid a stack of forms toward Frank along with a pen. Let's start the process. Fill out everything you can remember. Names, dates, accounts, anything relevant. I'll file tomorrow morning. Frank picked up the pen. Each stroke of ink on the form felt like a nail in the coffin of his old life. A death certificate for the marriage that had once meant everything. But there was something freeing in it too, like he was finally reclaiming control. When they were done, Ellis stood. One more thing, he said. If she calls you again, and she will, record it. Save everything. Her guilt will work in our favor. But don't argue. Don't threaten. Just document. Frank nodded, gripping the folder tight as he stood. As he stepped back into the sunlit lobby, the receptionist smiled at him again, but this time he noticed something new. There was a quiet respect in her eyes. He was no longer a man broken. He was a man preparing to rise. The motel room smelled faintly of bleach and regret. The kind of place with scratchy linens, a humming mini-fridge, and a remote that had seen better years. But for Frank Miller, it was the birthplace of resurrection. He stood in front of the cracked mirror above the sink, shirtless, toothbrush in hand. The man staring back wasn't unfamiliar, but he was someone Frank hadn't seen in years. Dark circles under his eyes, yes. A new line above his brow, sure. But there was something else in that reflection now. Something that had been buried beneath the weight of compromise and the silent erosion of marriage. Fire. He spat, rinsed, and smirked. Not dead yet, he muttered. Frank spent the next morning at a corner diner, hunched over a plate of overcooked eggs and burnt toast. His mind wasn't on the food, though. It was on what came next. For 10 years, every decision he made had been tethered to Sharon. Her preferences, her opinions, her needs. It was so ingrained, it had become muscle memory. But now, without her, those reflexes felt alien. What do I want? The question hit him mid-bite like a shot to the ribs. He didn't have an answer. Not yet. That afternoon, Frank found himself wandering a small strip mall, drawn to a storefront gym. The windows were fogged over, and bass-heavy music leaked from within. Inside, the air was thick with sweat and effort, two things he hadn't truly felt in years. The gym manager, a woman half his age but twice his energy, gave him a skeptical look. Looking for the Silver Sneakers program? She asked with a polite, plastic smile. Frank chuckled, then flexed his shoulders slightly. Nope, I'm looking for something that hurts. In a good way. That earned a nod. We've got a 30-day all-access challenge. You game. I just came out of a 10-year marriage, Frank said, signing the waiver. I'm game for anything. The days that followed became ritual. Not routine. He'd had enough of that with Sharon. This was something different. Every morning, Frank woke at 6 a.m., downed black coffee, and dragged his aching body to the gym. He traded his soft middle for sore muscles, and his sadness for sweat. Punches to the heavy bag became therapy. Sprints on the treadmill became purging. And every rep with iron reminded him, you are not broken. You are rebuilding. At night, instead of spiraling through old voicemails or replaying the scene of Sharon stepping out of the car, he read books on resilience, on masculinity, on rebuilding. One passage stuck with him. A man is not defined by what breaks him, but by how he rebuilds after the fall. He highlighted it, taped it above the motel headboard. Read it every night before bed like a prayer. Frank also went quiet, purposefully. No calls to Sharon. No posts on social media. He changed his number, forwarded all correspondence to his lawyer, and gave himself space to breathe. To be. He didn't answer the phone when Sharon called, though she tried. He didn't need to hear her apologies or twisted reasoning anymore. The only thing he needed to hear was his own inner voice. And it was getting louder. One afternoon, he drove to the outskirts of town where the highway stretched into long, curving horizons. A place where the wind cut through the silence and the sun dipped low like an old memory. He parked, stepped out onto the dusty shoulder, and screamed into the open air. A primal, guttural sound that rattled out from somewhere deep in his ribcage. Then he laughed, like really laughed. The kind of laugh that tears something open and lets light in. I'm still here, damn it, he said to no one, hands on his hips, heart pounding. I'm still ***ing here. He went back to the motel and dug out an old photo from his wallet. One from college. Him on a beat-up motorcycle, grinning like a man who didn't know limits. That guy was still in there beneath the scars. That night, he Googled local motorcycle auctions. He wasn't just rebuilding. He was reviving. And Frank Miller wasn't going to be anyone's second option ever again. The air outside was thick with late summer heat, but inside the Miller home, everything was cold, silent in the way that only a broken house can be. The walls that once echoed with laughter and the little footsteps of 3 children now felt like tombstones of a marriage that had died in one reckless, unforgettable night. It was a week since Sharon's night with Glenn. 7 days since Frank had left the shredded marriage certificate and his flattened wedding ring on the pillow they once shared. 7 days since Sharon chose a stranger's bed over her husband's loyalty. 7 days of silence from Frank. No calls, no messages, no trace. But Sharon returned anyway. Her heels clacked softly on the hardwood as she stepped inside, expecting confrontation, hoping for conversation, dreading judgment. She held her purse tightly, her eyes darting around the home like a criminal revisiting the scene of a crime. There were no signs of her children's toys, no backpacks near the door, no signs of Frank. He was gone. All of them were. Her first instinct was to call out his name. Frank? She tried, her voice uncertain, fragile. No answer. She walked further in and stopped in the hallway where the bedroom door stood slightly ajar. Inside, it looked the same, and yet not. His side of the dresser was empty. The closet door hung open, revealing only her side of clothes. On the pillow, hers now, and only hers, were the remnants of what she had once called forever. The torn marriage certificate, the wedding ring, bent and crushed into a useless circle of metal, and a yellow post-it note. Just 6 words, written in blocky, controlled handwriting. I meant my vows. You didn't. Sharon collapsed onto the bed, clutching the ring, suddenly realizing the weight of what she'd done. It wasn't just a mistake. It wasn't just one night. It was a decision, a defining line in the sand, and she had crossed it without looking back. She sobbed then, not the elegant kind of crying that garners sympathy, No, this was ugly, raw grief, the sound of a woman unraveling. She clutched the remnants of their life like a ghost clutching its old skin. It was just past noon when the doorbell rang. Sharon, still in a daze, shuffled to the door, mascara streaking her cheeks, ring clutched in her palm like a lifeline. A man in a sharp gray suit stood on the porch, holding a slim envelope. "Mrs. Miller?" he asked. She nodded, mouth slightly open, heart thudding like a trapped animal. "I'm here on behalf of Franklin Miller's attorney. You've been served." She reached out numbly and took the envelope. As he turned and left without another word, she closed the door slowly and backed into the kitchen like someone navigating a crime scene. With shaking fingers, she opened the envelope. Inside, divorce papers. Official. Cold. Unforgiving. Frank wasn't bluffing. There was in stark black ink, irreconcilable differences due to adultery. Attached was a detailed custody petition. He wanted full custody. He had evidence. Voicemails. Her own words recorded. Her admissions. Her giggling confessions. She realized in horror that Frank had probably saved everything. And why wouldn't he? He was a man watching his world burn at the hands of the person who swore to protect it with him. A surge of panic gripped her. No, this couldn't be happening. Not like this. She called him. It rang once and went straight to voicemail. She called again and again. Nothing. On the fifth try, she left a message, her voice breaking before she even began. "Frank, I'm home. I saw the papers. Please don't do this. I know what I did was stupid and selfish and unforgivable, but I'm still your wife. We have a family. We have children. I made a mistake one night. One stupid night. But you can't throw away everything we've built, please." The phone didn't ring back. No text. No call. No mercy. Hours later, Sharon stood in front of the hallway mirror, staring at the reflection of a woman she no longer recognized. The same hazel eyes, the same glossy brown hair, but none of the confidence, none of the spark. She touched her lips, remembering the giggles, the thrill, the electricity of being with someone new. And then she saw her eyes again. Empty, alone, punished. Glenn hadn't called. Of course not. It wasn't love, it was novelty. It wasn't passion, it was escapism. He got what he wanted and left her with the aftermath. Sharon turned her head and saw the framed photo by the door, Frank and the kids on the beach last summer. Frank, grinning as he held Frank Jr. on his shoulders. Rebecca and Jocelyn splashing at his sides. Her family, the life she had chosen to gamble for the thrill of one night. One night. One man. And now she had nothing. She slid down the wall and sat on the cold floor, knees tucked to her chest, staring at her broken ring. And for the first time, she didn't cry. She just whispered, hollowly, to no one at all, "I thought he'd forgive me." But Frank Miller was done. And Sharon had finally realized she hadn't just lost her husband. She had lost the only man who ever truly loved her. The morning sunlight streamed through the window of the modest motel room, painting long, golden bars across the floor. Frank sat at the small table near the window, a half-drunk cup of lukewarm coffee in his hand, untouched toast on the plate before him. His eyes were distant, lost in a horizon no one else could see. He'd been awake for hours, since long before the sun dared to rise. Sleep had come briefly, more out of emotional exhaustion than peace, and even then, it had been haunted by images he couldn't erase. Sharon's laughter, her soft moans, her whispered, "Be with me, Glenn." That voicemail had burned itself into his memory like a brand. He took another slow sip, staring into the bitter swirl of coffee. The sting in his chest was no longer sharp. It was dull now, numb, exhausted. But underneath that numbness, something else had taken root, a sense of finality, of clarity. Sharon had made her choice. And now, so had he. Just one night. That's all she said she wanted. But it was never just one night. That night was a door, a line, a declaration. That night said, My pleasure matters more than our vows. My curiosity is greater than your devotion. My excitement is worth the cost of your heart. She had crossed it willingly. She had stood at the threshold of their 10 years of shared dreams, held hands with another man, and walked into a stranger's bedroom like their life meant nothing. Frank hadn't simply lost a wife that night. He'd lost his teammate, his partner, the woman who once swore forever while sliding a ring onto his finger. And the ring? Flattened, crushed beneath the weight of her choices. He turned on his phone, already prepared for the swarm of missed calls and messages. But there were none, not a single one. A bitter chuckle escaped him. I guess Glenn kept her occupied. For a brief moment, he considered calling her, just to hear her voice again, to see if there was even a flicker of remorse in her tone. But he knew better. Sharon wasn't built for remorse. She was built for justification. She tried to twist it into some emotional need or blame it on routine, boredom, the pressures of motherhood. She'd beg him to see it as a spark, an awakening. But Frank wasn't asleep anymore. He was wide awake now, painfully so. His thoughts drifted to their children. Jocelyn, Rebecca, Anne, and little Frankie Jr.'s real heartbreak wasn't Sharon. It was them. They would suffer the most. Not because of what he did, but because their mother decided to gamble their family for one night of self-indulgence. He would fight for them, not out of vengeance, but because they deserved stability, safety, and a role model who didn't confuse excitement with betrayal. He'd already made the call to the lawyer. The paperwork was in motion. Adultery, ground for full custody, and every legal right to protect his children from her spiraling decisions. By 9 a.m., Frank had showered, dressed, and checked out of the motel. He drove in silence, past the Vanderlyn street without so much as a glance. He didn't need to see Sharon walk of shame her way back to reality. He drove straight to his mother's house. She met him at the door, eyes swollen from crying. Hers for him, not Sharon. She pulled him into a long, silent hug. "They don't know yet," she whispered. "They will," Frank said quietly, "but not everything. Just enough." Inside, the kids were watching cartoons. Rebecca was braiding Jocelyn's hair. Frankie Jr. was building towers of Legos and knocking them down with an action figure. When they saw their father, they ran to him, arms wide, hearts pure, innocent. "Daddy." He knelt, arms open, gathering them in. "I missed you," Jocelyn said. "I missed you more." And he had. God, he had. That night, he lay in the guest room, listening to the quiet rhythm of his children breathing down the hall. He stared at the ceiling, remembering Sharon's words. "It's just one night, Frank. It's not that much." But it was everything. One night had changed how he saw her. One night had destroyed trust, obliterated respect, and gutted love. One night had transformed him from husband to stranger, from loyal to lost. But in that destruction, something had also awakened. Clarity, strength, freedom. He would rise from this. He would build a new life, one where loyalty was never mistaken for weakness, where he could teach his daughters what love truly looks like, and his son what a man never tolerates. As he turned off the bedside lamp, Frank whispered to the darkness, "You gave up our forever for one night, and that one night was all I needed to be done."